On a sweltering hot day reaching a high of 88 degrees Fahrenheit in 2002, Japanese players stood in line, waiting for the GameCube's next hit game. Nintendo aimed to transport gamers across the globe to the tropical getaway of Delfino Isle, not escaping the heat, but instead embracing it. After waiting over 10 months after release of the GameCube, gamers would finally be able to play this summer's hot new phenomenon and Mario's next bold entry on a new generation of hardware. For some, this game would be a classic 3D Mario experience with new mechanics, but others would have a different experience, seeing the game as a seemingly rushed, glitchy mess with some odd design choices all around. Today, we're going to look at the history of Super Mario Sunshine. Yoshiaki Koizumi began working at Nintendo in April 1991, and his first task as a team member was to help illustrate the manual for The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. He had attended the Osaka University of the Arts and studied film, drama, and animation while he was there. With an ambition to create drama, an opportunity came for Koizumi to join Nintendo once he finished college. He believed that games were a good opportunity to, quote, create a kind of drama that you don't find in films, end quote. After moving through different roles at Nintendo, including script writing for Link's Awakening, and even becoming assistant director and game system director for Super Mario 64 and Majora's Mask respectively, eventually he landed in the role that would define his future at Nintendo, director of the now infamous Mario 128 demo. With Super Mario 128 premiering at Space World 2000, it was a popular demo showcasing exactly 128 Marios running around on a spherical surface with impressive physics and graphics. The game looked good, but it wasn't really a game per se. Koizumi struggled with the demo, unsure how he would make this demo into a full product. For technical reasons, Koizumi believed most of his ideas for Mario 128 would simply be impossible, and with the GameCube hardware, it did seem that way, so the project was shelved for the time being, with ideas and systems, mainly the physics, popping up in games like Pikmin and Metroid Prime, even influencing Twilight Princess. While he admitted in an interview with Wired that he wasn't very good at games like Super Mario Bros., having realized it on World 1-1, Koizumi did enjoy playing The Legend of Zelda a little more since you didn't die immediately. Eventually, Koizumi's ideas would be realized to an extent with Super Mario Galaxy. Before he could start on Galaxy, however, Koizumi was named a director of another Super Mario title, Super Mario Sunshine. Despite my original belief that Super Mario 128 would eventually become Super Mario Sunshine, in a press conference held in Japan retrieved and archived by GameCubicle.com, Miyamoto himself stated, "We're working on many different projects. We have shown the idea for Mario 128 before, which is headed in a different direction, but Super Mario Sunshine took this direction. It is an authentic sequel to Super Mario 64. And later, in a 2003 interview with CVG, Miyamoto would also state, "In the case of Mario, obviously we were doing work on the Mario 128 demo that we were showing at Space World, and separately we were doing work on experiments that we made into Mario Sunshine." In fact, after developing the 128 demo and after releasing Majora's Mask, Koizumi was starting to think about how Mario would function and look on the in-development GameCube. While Luigi's Mansion helped influence how the GameCube would function and even how the controller was laid out, the controller design is what pushed Koizumi into the direction of Super Mario Sunshine. According to Koizumi, by the time he had submitted the basic proposal to Mr. Miyamoto, he had, quote, already come up with the water pistol idea. Further saying, "I tried to explain how the analog stick could make players feel the touch of a water pistol. Letting Mario have a water pistol alone wouldn't make the game fun. I started thinking about the best way to feature a water pistol, how Mario should move and show the water pistol." After Koizumi had come up with the water pistol idea, the water pistol itself reminded him of summer, which then led him into the game's setting, Delfino Isle, a tropical island still within the world of Mushroom Kingdom. In fact, early in development, Koizumi even created a clay model of Delfino Isle to help envision where each level would take place. According to Takashi Tezuka, the stages and characters for the game were even finished early on in development, at least earlier than they normally would be. Tezuka states, "Personally, I'm the person who adds things and makes it fit after the fact." Tezuka would also recall Koizumi and other developers creating Isle Delfino out of clay, saying, "The first thing Koizumi and the others did was use clay and create a model about this big, of a dolphin-shaped island. Speaking of Delfino, according to Miyamoto, Delfino originally had human tourists, just walking around, something that a later entry in the Mario series would have. Curiously, Miyamoto did go on record saying, "Although this wasn't the Mushroom Kingdom, it still felt weird to have Mario talking to normal-looking people." A quote that is a little humorous considering Super Mario Odyssey's release in 2017. Satomi Asakawa, a character designer at Nintendo who had previously worked on Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Pikmin, was tasked with the character design. In an interview with Nintendo Power originally talking about Twilight Princess, Satomi admitted that she enjoys creating chubby characters, likely influencing the design of the Piantas. Though, according to an interview from Nintendo Power number 184, Nate Bildorf, an associate localization producer, the name for the Piantas and Gnocchis, which is another race located on Delfino, came from wanting Italian names. Gnocchis got their name because they look like pasta, so they were named after gnocchi, whereas Piantas were derived from the word pianta, the Italian word for plant. Internal development and release plans may have also played a part in the game being located on a tropical island though. From the beginning of development, Nintendo had always planned on releasing the game the summer after the GameCube released, and since the GameCube could, quote, reproduce water beautifully, Miyamoto and the team thought it would be a shame not to use and implement Koizumi's water pistol idea. Then, with the summer release, why not put Mario on a tropical island surrounded by water? Though a big reason why the game was set on a resort was because the developers wanted players to feel like they were on vacation while they were playing. While most Mario titles focused on movement and enemy design first, Super Mario Sunshine's setting and characters would be the genesis that influenced the rest of the game moving forward. With the initial idea of Sunshine coming from Koizumi's idea of using water pistols, the biggest and most obvious change, aside from the tropical setting, was Flood. The water cannon Mario wears on his back throughout the game, Flood is used by Mario to not only clean up surfaces with the squirt nozzle, but also hover, soar, and run throughout the levels. Flood evolved from Koizumi's initial idea of having water pistols. Having toyed with the idea of using graffiti in a fun way, like Jet Set Radio, they then had the idea of cleaning up the graffiti with the water pistols. As development went along, the pistols themselves would turn into a backpack. Koizumi and Tezuka would describe that Nintendo didn't want to create literal guns, so they got creative and made a weird backpack thing. In the same interview, Koizumi likened it to a firefighter shouldering a pack and rescuing the people of Delfino. Giving Mario a tool like Flood was such a departure for the series, there were quite a few meetings where Miyamoto would remind them of what is or isn't Mario, much like his outing with Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. Getting to the point where, while arguing with the rest of the staff, they would say to Miyamoto, "Okay then, just write down what Mario is for us so we know." Flood would prove to be vital to not only the game, but the game design itself. Prior to Flood being a simple platforming tool, the game leaned more heavily on the cleaning up aspect, with Koizumi stating in an interview with Retro Gamer, "While we were making prototypes, we were exploring the idea of a disaster recovery mission-style game." Though allowing Mario to hover with Flood allowed developers to create a game that was a lot less linear and a lot less precision platforming focused, no longer needing to design for challenges that go from A to B, instead allowing for multiple routes to be taken throughout each stage. Miyamoto highlighted the struggle of innovation, stating that, "This is something we struggle with every time we make a new entry in one of our franchise series, but we always want to do something new from the last games. The younger staff in particular always want to go in a totally different direction, to do something really bold and surprising." Another challenge was where and how to place pools of water, since you couldn't use Flood forever. The developers, of course, had to bake these water sources into the level design in a way that made sense, whether that be pools or fountains, etc. In the final game, players would get access to two nozzles other than the squirt and hover. These would be the turbo and rocket nozzles. Like most in-development items, there were a lot of changes, including cutting down the amount of nozzles from 10 to the 4 that we'd see in the game. According to Koizumi, originally there were 10 different types. We just kept adding them whenever we thought of a different situation they could be used in. One reason for cutting the amount of nozzles was because the team felt that it was too akin to Zelda. Getting a new nozzle and being able to use it for specific instances sounds similar to how Zelda's dungeon designs work, and Miyamoto states in the same interview that, "You know, I have intuitive sense of what's Mario-ish and what's Zelda-ish." with Miyamoto and the team instead focusing on the difference in philosophy Mario games have versus Zelda games. Miyamoto even compares the two series, saying, "In both games you're playing with the environment. Both of them have aspects of Hakoniwa, and both involve the player looking for solutions. But in Mario, the action is the centerpiece, and we create these games with as wide an appeal as possible, so anyone can play them. Zelda, on the other hand, there's a certain volition required of the player. If you don't independently explore things, you'll never experience much of the game. In turn, we don't ask as much of the players in terms of the action in Zelda. Recently, I think this way of thinking about Mario and Zelda has trickled down somewhat to the rest of the staff too. In fact, prior to Super Mario Sunshine, Koizumi had his hand in a few of the 3D Zelda titles, so in his mind he wanted to borrow Zelda ideas like a more connected world, larger stage design, etc., which is why the Isle of Delfino doesn't happen to have an ice world in it. These larger worlds also necessitated level design that would ensure players didn't get lost. In Super Mario Sunshine, we put large landmarks in the stages, so players could move around using those as indicators of their position. This isn't the only time the design philosophy had changed throughout Mario's different incarnations, with the team developing Sunshine creating gameplay that prioritized adjusting the camera or the player's view above precise platforming, as was the case with Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario World. The idea behind this, according to Miyamoto, is to ensure players don't feel misled by making level design that is broad, creating solid underlying mechanics, and making the rest of the gameplay, quote, a little looser, end quote. Instead of blocking off unexpected paths the players took, the team behind Sunshine embraced it, with Koizumi even saying, "Who cares, as long as it's fun." Now, the antithesis to FLUDD, the goop as Koizumi calls it, also changed a lot through development, mainly how it looks. The developers didn't want to feel gross and filthy while cleaning up the island, so they changed it to a more chocolate sauce look that we'd see in the final game. Aside from the goop, another oddity of Super Mario Sunshine's development that would get partially vetoed by Takashi Tezuka was the idea for Mario to wear a different outfit. Tezuka recalls that, when Koizumi first showed me the plans for this game, he asked if he could change Mario's clothes. At the time I thought, it's not really Mario if he's not wearing his traditional outfit, but I gave the okay for a short-sleeved shirt, which is what we'd eventually see in the final game. Tezuka would also note that he looked forward to seeing Mario in different outfits in future titles, ending on, "I hope we can see different getups for Mario down the road." For the music, Koji Kondo returns, and joining him is Shinobu Tanaka, who started working at Nintendo right before Sunshine began development. Kondo is officially credited with Delfino Plaza, Bianco Hills, Secret Course, Rico Harbor, Gelato Beach, and staff role. Tanaka is officially credited with Pinna Park, Serena Beach, Noki Bay, Noki Depths, Pianta Village, Secret Course, Sky and Sea, Mecha Bowser, and Event. With Super Mario 64 having a somewhat repetitive track list, likely due to limitations of the Nintendo 64's cartridge size, Sunshine is able to have a distinct track for each level. In a musical retrospective written for Medium.com, Randy, or at Amarinofu, breaks down how each level within Sunshine shares musical themes, with their point being this, quote, helps to convey the sense of connectedness in Isle Delfino. From the beginning of development, Super Mario Sunshine was meant to be different, with Koizumi even confirming that Miyamoto himself, quote, wanted the GameCube Mario to be something wild. With a new console, a new world to explore, and for the first time, a tool that Mario could use throughout the adventure, Super Mario Sunshine was gearing up to be a summer blockbuster like no other. With the game being in development for about a year and a half prior to its release in 2002, with basic player movements having been completed by summer of 2001, Nintendo would unveil a sneak preview of Super Mario Sunshine at Space World 2001. Prior to any official announcement or reveal, a Japanese magazine by the title of Nintendo Dream announced in their August 2001 issue that Sunshine would land on Nintendo's newest console in 2002. Though no specific time frame was given, in IGN's reporting of the announcement, they noted that Nintendo would be trying to keep the release as close to the launch of the GameCube as possible, hinting at a first quarter release date. A few days later, in August of 2001, Nintendo would show off tons of new footage ahead of the GameCube's September release. Among them would be a new Super Mario title. Miyamoto starts by telling everyone in attendance that the trailer they're about to show is confidential material, but outlets such as IGN would secretly record the trailer and leak it online, introducing the game and Mario giving his iconic "It's me, Mario" tagline before jumping right in with a big band rendition of the overworld theme, at least the iconic opening for it, before going into background drums and xylophone/steel drums. Mario jumps, flips, and runs around a town with tiled roofs, white brick, and luscious green hills as the music transitions into a rendition of the water theme from Super Mario Bros. Before finally landing on the final notes, showing the title Mario Sunshine in Japanese, before boldly proclaiming a summer 2002 release date. While the trailer is less than a minute long, it had journalists and gamers alike speculating and guessing what this game would be about. What's that thing on Mario's back? What's with the tropical setting? What are these odd creatures running around or just standing around? And why does Mario have his sleeves rolled up? IGN's first takeaway was that Mario Sunshine, quote, seems a cross between Super Mario 64 and Sonic Adventure with much larger environments. While commenting on the still mysterious gadget, IGN noted that Miyamoto would not state exactly what it is, but that it's cool, whatever it is. IGN detailed again how they felt that Mario's new location is more fitting for Sonic Adventure, and described how the plumber jumped and flipped around an area that seemed larger and more detailed than Super Mario 64's locations. They called the playstyle and movement brilliant, and noted that in the top right corner of the trailer there was some sort of meter or gauge, possibly related to whatever Mario was wearing. In their conclusion, IGN writes that, while the footage of the under development game presented at Space World 2001 didn't serve as undeniable proof of Nintendo's genius, the truth is that much of the genius behind the title is still a mystery. But even so, the title has already shot up to take a top spot on our most wanted games list. As soon as we know more about the hugely anticipated title, so will you. While we do see some blue Piantas in this early footage, we also see glimpses of other enemies and NPCs, such as this Hinokuri, and a human girl, evidence that they had planned on including humans in Delfino Plaza. Aside from the Space World 2001 demo that was shown, Nintendo kept pretty tight-lipped on the game. Assuming the game had started development in late 2000 or early 2001, it's likely the game wasn't in development for more than half a year, so showing the game in such an early state was likely just to appease fans, since there was little info on GameCube titles aside from Luigi's Mansion and Pikmin. Between its Space World 2001 premiere and E3 2002, Nintendo did not show off too much. Part of the reason could have been because they were afraid of showing Mario's cool new backpack. In an interview on the day of release, Miyamoto stated, "When we showed the first glimpse of something really unique, we did not show Mario using the water sprayer. We didn't want that idea to be stolen at such an early stage." Though, in finishing the quote, it's also likely Nintendo didn't reveal much because, over the past year, we've changed the direction of the game so that Super Mario Sunshine is more like Super Mario 64, a kind of conservative move. In February of 2002, however, Mark of NGC magazine was shown a clip of Super Mario Sunshine by Miyamoto himself, while at the same time Nintendo had released a few screenshots of the game shown here. In the issue, since Miyamoto showed the clips of Mario Sunshine in confidence, Mark was forced to recreate what he'd seen by sketching out screenshots. In the two official screenshots from the magazine, Mario has a life meter and a closer to finished FLUDD water meter. The sketches include one of Mario spraying goop with FLUDD, Yoshi chatting with Mario, and a large piranha plant shooting oil at Mario. Mark also asked Miyamoto specifically about Nintendo making shorter games, and while Miyamoto states that Luigi's Mansion was designed to have a story you play through once, and Pikmin was designed to be played 3 times at least, Miyamoto said, "We should concentrate on making unique, rather than long or more difficult games, with small groups of developers. Mario Sunshine has a small team and will make you want to play it again and again. Zelda, on the other hand, has a comparatively large team working on it." Other screenshots of the game followed, with images of Bianco Hills and Rico Harbor being released. Finally, on Tuesday, May 21st, 2002, at E3 2002, Satoru Iwata would say the words, "I'd like you to do Super Mario Sunshine." The little over a minute trailer gave prospective players and journalists new looks at different locations, new enemies and characters, squid surfing, and finally a look at Flood. Not only with Mario using Flood to clean things up, but also to hover, a feature that even got an audible reaction from the crowd. Most importantly, however, the trailer ended in an August 2002 announcement, meaning GameCube owners would only need to wait about 3 more months before they got to play the next evolution of Mario. Live demos and other footage of the game was available on the show floor, giving people a look at Yoshi and more information on the story. The demo itself was well received, with GameSpot writing, "The brief demo that was shown of Super Mario Sunshine was more than enough to make us incredibly excited to play it for ourselves." And IGN reporting, "This looks to be platforming at its best. In the footage, you'll see Mario bounce high into the air for what seems like a mile. Very impressive." Another talking point that is common for this generation of games are the graphics. With the GameCube, PS2, and even Dreamcast being a big jump from the 32-bit PS1 or even the RAM-limited Nintendo 64, graphical fidelity was a big focus for new titles. On the topic, GameSpot wrote, "From a visual perspective, Super Mario Sunshine looks quite good. The frame rate looks rock solid and the game plays with an impressive speed overall. The animation is incredibly smooth and the brown ooze is constantly morphing and changing while reflecting the surroundings. Visual trickery such as real-time reflections, a blurring effect for the spraying water, and realistic lighting and shadows round out the game's basic but compelling look. Also, the horizon stretches on for quite a distance, and the area that was shown was rife with other characters that were all fully animated. One particular scene showed Mario surfing on a small watercraft, and the reaction of the water to boat was complete with image refraction as sunlight bounced off the wake in an incredibly realistic manner." One interesting note is that GameSpot noticed that the frame rate of this E3 2002 build happens to be rock solid, and noted that the game plays with an impressive speed overall. An emphasis from IGN highlighted that, as Mario jumped back and forth between the houses, the camera panned underneath him and followed him flawlessly to the rooftop, even saying that it's a huge improvement over Sunshine's predecessor, Super Mario 64. GameSpot's final thoughts on the game say this: "The brief demo that was shown of Super Mario Sunshine was more than enough to make us incredibly excited to play it for ourselves. The amount of interactivity in the environments is refreshing, the puzzle design looks to be smart, and the gameplay seems as solid as ever." Taking a closer look at the trailer itself doesn't reveal much, other than the fact we only see Mario using the hover nozzle once in the trailer, with an audience reaction taking place when he does. In the August 2002 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly, they noted that, "Ultimately, it doesn't matter what's new or what's different from Mario 64. What matters is if Sunshine can give GameCube owners a good time this fall. Our playtime at E3 left us hopeful." With that August 26th, 2002 release date set, that meant Koizumi and the team at Nintendo only had a few more months to finish a game that was likely only in development for a little over a year. Two months after E3, however, before Sunshine hit North America, Super Mario Sunshine hit store shelves in Japan. July 18th, 2002, Japanese GameCube owners got the chance to play Mario's leap into the next generation. Upon booting the game up, players were put right into a cutscene that, to the surprise of many, included full voice acting. Having imported the Japanese version, IGN Cube, a version of IGN focusing on the GameCube in the early 2000s, would give some first impressions, saying, "That's right, Nintendo went ahead and recorded English voiceovers for all the characters, forcing Japanese gamers to view subtitles. You can judge the voices for yourself in the sample video below. That is, for all the characters except Mario, as the hero has, perhaps intentionally, yet to utter a word." And further in the article, Anoop Gantayat wrote, "Similar to what we feel with Mario 64 years ago, we can't stop playing Mario Sunshine. Classic Nintendo pacing is built into this title, rewarding players quickly with new levels and items, and as with previous Nintendo games, you'll find yourself going back to previous levels once you've obtained the new items." By the time of writing, the IGN Cube team were only a few hours into the game, having collected around 10 shines, but so far the response seemed to be good. Japanese reviewers, namely Famitsu, also gave similar praise. Famitsu Cube gave the game a 36 out of 40, with 2 10s and 2 8s, a solid praise, but knocking it a bit for difficulty later in the game. though a later Famitsu article would end up scoring the game at a 37 out of 40. Rumors of a 38 out of 40 score circulated on the internet for a bit, with a thread on psoworld.com claiming it made the game a platinum title, though user Ghostar was able to shut down the misinformation, saying, "This 38 out of 40 score that has been circulating from Gamefront.ee and Cube Europe is fake. It started on a Japanese BB and has spread rapidly." A few days later, as reported by IGN, Super Mario Sunshine managed to sell nearly 500,000 units in 4 days, citing a tracking service titled Media Create for their number, a very popular sales tracking company. However, Dengeki Online would claim that the title sold 308,765 copies between July 19th and July 21st, which is a ways below the nearly 500,000 like IGN and Media Create claim. Media Create would place the title as the best-selling game sold between July 15th and July 21st, meaning that, at very least, it was doing well sales-wise in Japan. With players excited to import the game and play it, hands-on articles like IGN's began to crop up, which was expected, as most review sites wanted to ensure they had access to the games first. Eventually, Super Mario Sunshine would hit North American store shelves on August 26, 2002, almost a full year after the GameCube released. Though gamers had to wait nearly a year, the response was exactly what Nintendo was hoping for. 9s, 10s, 4.5s out of 5s, and an 8 out of 10 sprinkled here and there meant Sunshine was in fact critically acclaimed. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it a unanimous 9.5, with a 7 for visuals, 8 for sound, 8 for ingenuity, and 9 for replay. IGN gave it a 9.4 out of 10, with Fran Mirabella III making it an editor's choice title, with such key features as totally new control mechanics and moves, thanks to an all-new water cannon strapped to Mario's back, float, jet, slide, and spray. Yoshi is unlockable as Mario's steed, taps into the GameCube for visual effects including a huge draw distance, real-time reflections, water refraction, detailed particle effects, and slick animations, lengthy 25+ hour game, collect up to 120 shines for fantastic replay value, and more. Other magazines and review sites such as Nintendo Power, GamePro, and GameSpy gave Sunshine perfect scores, 10, 5-star, and 5 out of 5 respectively. The game received praise from all angles, with the graphics, music, puzzle design, platforming, and yes, the cutscenes all being generally well received. Electronic Gaming Monthly's Greg speaks on Flood, stating, "It adds an entirely new dimension to the game. This isn't just another Mario 64. Now you need to think of even more creative ways to finish levels and defeat bosses." I wasn't too into it at first, but after a while I found myself understanding what the game was expecting from me and enjoying the whole experience a lot. In Nintendo Power issue 160, they would say that Sunshine is taking the action of Super Mario 64 to new radiant heights. Super Mario Sunshine glows with the classic hop and bop, wham bam adventuring of Mario's previous 3D adventures, while definitely incorporating ambitious gameplay elements. With George of Nintendo Power going so far as to say Sunshine is the best Mario adventure to date. Going back to IGN's review, they say, beyond all the stellar level design, Nintendo has again outdone itself and the rest of the industry with some of the strongest control mechanics around. Summed up, we think you're going to love it. If there is one GameCube title that everyone should own, it's this. Nintendo World Report's Billy Berghammer definitively stated, "We have so many expectations of the new Mario title that we become hypercritical of every single intricacy of the latest game. I believe Super Mario Sunshine to be one of the best, if not the best Mario title I have ever played. It's exactly what I wanted as a Mario fan and as a Nintendo gamer. For as many personal expectations I've had for this game, I am more than thrilled with what Nintendo delivered," with a neat pros and cons list at the end as well. And the pros are things that many people agree upon with Sunshine, including the fact that Flood isn't necessarily a gimmick, there's plenty of gameplay, the music within the game is incredible, and the level design is, quote, unbelievable. However, within the cons list are things that Sunshine fans and haters may remember. Collision problems, easy, short, and disappointing final boss battle, voice production is terrible, some camera issues, and bruises you'll get after banging your head against the wall from the challenging shines. From a review standpoint, Super Mario Sunshine seemed to be the next big thing, but reviews couldn't help but compare Sunshine to its predecessor, Super Mario 64, whether that be directly stating Sunshine is an improvement, but it would also draw different criticism because of this. Super Mario 64 redefined 3D platforming at the time, and Sunshine doesn't. drawing much of the same basic ideas and the layout from Mario 64. IGN stated in their review, "It is a continuation of the Super Mario 64 style. Level design, control mechanics, and gameplay concepts are nicely refined, but it is not a revolutionary product. Even drawing comparisons to generation-defining titles such as Metal Gear Solid or Grand Theft Auto 3. One of the biggest differences between the game that was shown at E3 2002 and the game reviewers and players would end up playing was the frame rate, oddly enough. In early footage of Super Mario Sunshine, the game ran at a tight 60 FPS, but the final game would be at 30, with reviewers even noting that there were frame rate issues beyond the downgrade. One other major note for Sunshine is the fact that reviewers found Isle Delfino a great location with good level variety, despite the fact that it, quote, may not be as eclectic a group of locales, with no ice, lava, or desert worlds. Though the game was well received by many, it also drew criticism from many, including issues with performance. Some stated that Flood and Yoshi were mere gimmicks. In GameSpot's review, writer Jeff Gerstmann noted the camera, while it may technically be improved over Mario 64, still didn't cut it. He went as far as stating, "Actually, much of the game's difficulty comes from having to keep the camera in check while performing Mario's otherwise simple tasks." Jeff also took a moment to tear down the voice acting, with him arguing, "Super Mario Sunshine's FMV also houses some of the lousiest voice work ever to be found on the GameCube." In his conclusion, Jeff writes, "On its own merits, Super Mario Sunshine is a solid game with a really distinctive look and some great moments, but it also has its fair share of shortcomings. While the game isn't overly difficult, too many of the game's goals are the sort that make you think, well, at least I'll never have to do that again, immediately after completing them. The game's technical issues and often gimmicky design are still tougher to ignore, and they combine to make the game seem surprisingly unpolished and somewhat rushed at times. In the end though, there's enough in Super Mario Sunshine to warrant a purchase, particularly when you consider that there really aren't any decent platformers to be found on the GameCube, and that this really is the only new Mario game out there." Though GameSpot gave the game an 8 out of 10, they would later give it the most disappointing GameCube game, citing the fact that up until Sunshine, every Mario title was genre-defining, whereas Sunshine was not. Quote, "After 6 long years since Super Mario 64 came out, the best Nintendo could come up with in that time was some slightly bigger environments and a backpack-mounted water cannon?" Having released at the end of the month on August 26th, it's quite the surprise that the game was able to snatch the number 2 spot in the August sales charts, having lost to Madden 2003, which came out on the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube on August 12th. 10 days after its North American release though, Nintendo announced that Super Mario Sunshine had sold over 350,000 copies, beating out Halo and even Grand Theft Auto 3, both of which took at least a month to hit that figure. The hyped and well-reviewed return of Nintendo's mascot also helped boost GameCube sales, with retail partners stating sales jumped an average of 50%. Peter McDougall, Executive VP of Sales and Marketing at Nintendo of America, said the game was running 36% ahead of even Super Mario 64, which, if you've forgotten, sold more than 10 million units. This figure made Sunshine a top-selling console game for all of 2002, though some didn't see the sell-through rate lasting, considering Resident Evil 0 and Metroid Prime were releasing in November, and not to mention Star Fox Adventures coming out later in September. Later in 2002, NPD Fun World would release November sales data showing that the GameCube had achieved 468,000 sales that month, with the Sunshine falling in 3rd place for GameCube games, behind Mario Party 4 and Metroid Prime, though it should be noted Prime released in November and Mario Party released in October. Sunshine naturally helped drive sales of the GameCube in 2002, but from October to March, sales were down about 12%, going from 3.29 million in October of 2001 to March 2002, to 2.87 in October of 2002 to March of 2003. Though the GameCube did release in November of 2001, so a decrease like this isn't super abnormal. Sticking within the same time frame, by October 2002, the game had sold over 624,000 units in Japan, and NPD Group would announce it was the best-selling game in 2002, at least in the United States. By September 2003, only a year later, the game had received its own Player's Choice version, slashing the price to $29.99 and making it more available to GameCube owners who didn't already have it, or new-time owners since holiday 2003 was just around the corner. However, by E3 2003, Nintendo stood in a weird spot. Satoru Iwata stood on stage and confirmed in an odd amount of transparency for the company, a sign of the changing of the guard with Iwata now at the helm, that the GameCube did not have the sell-through that they had hoped. And while Super Mario Sunshine was, quote, a high-quality game, it also did not live up to sales expectations. The focus for that E3 was to show how Nintendo was going to bolster the GameCube in an effort to compete with Sony and now Microsoft. But if Mario isn't even living up to expectations, what more can you do? In 2003, at the 6th Annual Interactive Achievement Awards, Super Mario Sunshine was nominated, but ultimately did not win Console Platform Action Adventure Game of the Year, losing out to Ratchet & Clank. By June 2006, over 5.5 million copies of Super Mario Sunshine had sold worldwide, but earlier that year, in May of 2006, Nintendo had formally shown off and announced the GameCube's successor, the Wii. With the announcement of the Wii, Nintendo also announced they had planned to release the console by the end of 2006. While showing off the console, footage of a new Mario game appeared, with Nintendo also announcing Super Mario Galaxy. 2006 would end not only the GameCube era of Nintendo, but also Super Mario Sunshine's time in the sun. Featuring a new type of gimmick, that being the spherical worlds Mario would traverse, Galaxy appeared to have similar technology that was used in Mario 128. The gimmick itself would prove less frustrating to players than the weird backpack he was given in Sunshine. In a Wii preview for CBG, Matt Wales would go so far as to say that Sunshine had the distinctly unenviable privilege of following Super Mario 64. Needless to say, its troubling reliance on its predecessor for gameplay ideas alongside a distinct lack of polish, occasional moments where the game practically stood up and shouted, "Oh my god, someone forgot to finish me," had Mario fans frothing at Nintendo's door. Sunshine, for all of its charms, lacked so much of the indefinable magic that coursed through Mario's earlier iterations. We were starting to get pretty apprehensive when we learned that Super Mario Galaxy, the plumber's first run-in with the Wii and its newfangled remote, would be playable on the show floor at this year's E3. Truth be told though, it took us approximately 4 seconds to get over our initial doubts. You see, Nintendoids everywhere can breathe a sigh of relief, safe in the knowledge that Mario is back, and if the E3 demo is anything to go by, better than ever. And he had a point. While Super Mario Sunshine was critically acclaimed upon release and sold relatively well, the game didn't have much time to develop. With multiple different Mario games being worked on, with Mario 128, rumors of an actual Super Mario 64 2, and of course, Sunshine itself, the game's development timeline is at best 2 years, at worst 1 year, and most likely somewhere in between at 1.5 years. It simply wasn't enough time for Nintendo to fully build upon what 64 had done, and according to Miyamoto himself in a press conference the day of Sunshine's release, we should have designed the game differently, but we couldn't. That, "but we couldn't," says a lot in a few words. Judging by cut content, there was a lot more that they were still playing with and wanting to implement, like multiplayer, just as an example. While Super Mario Sunshine may be the third best-selling GameCube game, coming in behind Smash Bros. And Mario Kart, it's long been viewed as the black sheep of the main Mario titles. The one that got away, or more importantly, the one that paved the way for games such as Mario Galaxy and Mario Odyssey. Without these sunshines of the gaming industry, we wouldn't get even better iterations. But that's not to say that, despite its flaws, Super Mario Sunshine is anything but a good day in the sun. Thanks for watching. Hi everyone, it's me, VideoGameDocs. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the development and history of Super Mario Sunshine. Having grown up with GameCube games and Sunshine being my first platformer, I thought it'd be fitting to mirror my Luigi's Mansion video and release a Sunshine video at the end of October. Just to give a quick update on things, in the coming weeks, I'll be releasing a recap video of my presentation titled Video Game Preservation and YouTube, which I gave at the Save the Game Symposium at the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York, and then hopefully soon after that, you'll receive another new video from me. This one has been in the works for a while, and I'm really happy with how it's going. It features a few new friends, and I'll have a trailer for it also coming out in the next few weeks. Thanks for your support, and if you'd like more updates and behind-the-scenes content, head on over to my Patreon. It's free now, and will continue to be free until I'm able to produce the content that I'd like to produce for it. See you soon.